you recall back in February, 22-year-old Amir Locke was shot and killed by Minneapolis police during a no-knock search warrant. Well, prosecutors officially decided not to press charges against the officers in this case. Locke was shot just seconds after police entered his apartment when police say they saw a gun emerge from under the blanket where Locke was laying. The police were serving out a warrant for a homicide investigation, and Locke was in legal possession of the firearm that he had on him. Now, this put the police department, the Minneapolis police, the same department that had killed George Floyd, under scrutiny yet again. So, Karen, walk me through this. Do you think it was the correct decision legally not to move forward with charges against the officers?
Well, according to the investigation, it appears that there was not a basis to move forward against the police officer based on the circumstances. At the time of the incident, the no-knock warrants were admissible. They were acceptable. And so this is what the police did. It wasn't Amir Locke wasn't listed as an occupant or the person that was renting out that apartment. It was his cousin. And so that person was the subject of the warrant. They had no idea that he would be in that residence. And so in the court, they were investigating a murder. And so I think that it was just horribly unfortunate that he was there. He had, as you indicated, a legal right to have the weapon. And so it just, the police officer specifically indicated that if he didn't draw his weapon and fire, then he would have lost his life and or the other officers in the SWAT team that responded. So unfortunately, that's the case. I believe that Amir Locke's family is going to pursue this in a civil action, but in terms of criminally, there was no criminal investigation needed or warranted according to the investigators in this case.
Dr. Pearson, it seemed that this is, and clearly there are problems with no-knock warrants, but it seems also from the statement released by the AG's office that there was a desire to move forward with this, but legally they couldn't, and that they still put the blame on the officers, which is interesting because, look, at one hand, you know, he was armed, Locke, but I mean, think about his perspective, right? So people just enter into the apartment. He doesn't know what's going on, and he had the right to that gun. But you have situations where maybe both sides were understandable in this, and yet do you still feel the government is still putting the blame on the police even though they can't legally charge them?
They are. I mean, they have a problem with these no-knock warrants. I have a problem with these no-knock warrants. They happen most of the time at night. So it's not surprising that when you wake somebody up, they're groggy and they happen to have a gun on them, that they might point it at the person who's entering the dwelling. I actually disagree. I think that they should be charged. I think a reasonably prudent police officer should be able to identify whoever it is that's in front of them. You know, when they go in with these tactical teams, there are shields. There are all sorts of things that they have for protection that can, you know, prevent them from being hit with a bullet. And so before they say, you know, who are you? Identify yourself. I just think that the way that the police handle these situations is wrong, because if I walked into your dwelling and you pointed a gun at me and I shot you, I think that there would be a problem. But the police are given a pass, and I think that's wrong.
Well, Karen, do you agree with Dr. Pearson? Because these are the factors that they considered, the AG's office, in order not to pursue. One, the police were conducting a search warrant related to a homicide in which there were high-powered rounds that had been used. Two, the suspects remained at large. Three, the suspects were known to possess firearms. And four, an unidentified individual, Amir Locke, was holding a firearm pointed in the direction of one of the officers. What did you make? Well, I mean, do you agree with Dr. Pearson?
Well, I agree with Dr. Pearson, and my understanding is that the homicide happened in a different jurisdiction in St. Paul, and their recommendation was that it was a different type of warrant that should have been served. And so then we go to Minneapolis and they decide that it should be a no-knock warrant based on the four indicators that you stated. So I think that it needs the scrutiny that the Breonna Taylor case received in Kentucky. So moving forward, unfortunately, that law changed. There's not a clear indication of what Minneapolis is going to do moving forward with their no-knock warrants. But I understand the reasoning behind it. We have a homicide, but it's just calls into question the police procedures. And I agree. I mean, in this particular case, he Amir Locke was just an unfortunate victim, but he's one of thousands, unfortunately, throughout the United States that this happens with, and the law needs to change. These laws need to change. And I don't think that the benefit outweighs the detriment in this particular case with these no-knock warrants.
And Karen, since we are actually, I know we have to sign you off, you talked about the civil case. Walk me through that, the likelihood of success there.
Well, the mother, my understanding is retained Benjamin Crump. He's very visible in many of these cases. So I'm hopeful given this information. I mean, this was an innocent victim. And so my estimation is that it will be successful and that the city of Minneapolis will pay out some, not that it at all replaces the life that was lost, but it's a lesson for law enforcement moving forward.
All right. Well, we'll continue to monitor the Amir Locke case, given the update that happened yesterday with the non-pressing of charges against any of the officers involved. Clearly disagreement about that. I'm sure that this is just a microcosm of a lot of disagreement out there on it, but it is important also that the law was laid out and the understanding and the factors were laid out for people to understand on their own.
Physical fights? Because you start physical fights?
Now, not only does Depp deny any of these allegations, but he is claiming that he is the victim of abuse.
You hit me last night.
No, and you hit back, so don't act like you don't
I
participate.
pushed you.
Truth is an absolute defense to a claim of defamation.
This trial is as star-studded as it gets. Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. Tune into the Law&Crime Network for gavel-to-gavel coverage.